Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of AIM Network's live stream. Without any further ado, let me read out some of the best headlines for the night. Sam Altman has paused ads, slowed AI agents, and rerouted compute to ship a new reasoning model that OpenAI claims it outperforms Google's Gemini 3, and a dramatic rule reversal from last year when Sundar Pichai declared Google's own code red after being blindsided by ChatGPT. This underscores how intense the competitive pressure is, of the failing ChatGPT engagement and rising DeepSeek benchmarks, which have all forced OpenAI to put everything on a single breakthrough. And up next, Apple has named Bangalore University alumnus and former Google Microsoft executive Amar Subramanya as the vice president of AI, handing him control of Apple's foundation models, ML research, and AI safety as John Giannandrea retires by 2026. This is its biggest AI leadership shakeup since Apple Intelligence was launched, coming just as Siri's reboot slips into 2026. And Zoho CEO Sridhar Vembu has publicly challenged Y Combinator chief Gary Tan and his claim that AI-powered vibe-coded internal apps will kill $30 per seat SaaS softwares. And he's arguing that Zoho is still growing customers by 50% plus, and no credible vibe-coded email, spreadsheet, accounting, or messaging tools exist yet, and that without security, privacy, compliance, and long-term maintenance guarantees, vibe coding simply accelerates invisible tech debt until systems collapse. And this is turning into a defining battle over whether AI will replace disciplined software engineering or merely supercharge it. And the first news for the night, because OpenAI has hit the big red button. Sam Altman has declared an internal code red for ChatGPT. He's paused ads, slowed down agents like Pulse and Shopping, and is rerouting people and GPUs into one thing, which is shipping a new reasoning model next week that OpenAI says is ahead of Google's Gemini 3. Is this the long-rumored International Math Olympiad gold medal model finally breaking its cover? Or is it just a benchmarking theater to calm investors and win back users from Google and DeepSeek? Because right now, Gemini users are already spending more time per visit than ChatGPT. Because just look at this Financial Times chart on your screen. And OpenAI's own executives say that ChatGPT downloads are down double digits since August. And at the same time, investors are dumping tech while assets in leveraged ETFs hit record highs. It's pure thrill cashing in a nervous sort of market. Last year, it was Sundar Pichai hitting code red inside Google after ChatGPT blindsided them. This year, it's Sam Altman slamming the same button at OpenAI. So why is OpenAI betting the house on one new reasoning model? But let's understand, what does code red actually change for you, the user, or you the builder, or you the investor if you're watching. Let's break it down. But before that, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to AIM Network. You surely do not want to miss out on this one. So according to the information, Sam Altman sent an internal memo and a Slack message telling employees that ChatGPT is at a critical time. So inside OpenAI, code red means this, which is to reprioritize ChatGPT above everything, delay monetization experiments, especially ads, which has quietly taken the internet by storm. And remember, we had covered this previously on Front Page as well, even before the world was talking about it. I guess this is how we're gonna wait it for now. Besides, the company wants to slow roll AI agents for shopping and health, and first and foremost, ship a new reasoning model next week that beats Gemini 3 in OpenAI's own tests. So on the chopping block for now is display and shopping ads inside ChatGPT, as you very well can see in the image. Consumer-facing AI agents that were meant to book travel, handle purchases, and manage health workflows. And of course, Pulse, the personalized news/market intelligence product. All of that goes to the back burner so the company can fix core issues that users keep complaining about. which is one, the model behavior. Fewer weird refusals, fewer hallucinations, and less therapy speak. And speed and reliability, which is fewer timeouts, more consistent quality between multiple sessions. And of course, some elements of personalization, which is ChatGPT that actually remembers your preferences and feels like your assistant. And then, of course, you have image generation, keeping up with Google's Nano Banana Pro and others in the image generation arms race. Because Sora 2 is not soaring anymore. Because internally, Nick Turley, who handles ChatGPT, is reminding the teams of the stakes involved. Because ChatGPT still handles around 70% of global assistant activity and around 10% of search like queries on the internet. And remember, if that share drops while Gemini 3 and DeepSeek V3.2 Speciale sprint ahead on reasoning benchmarks, OpenAI's $500 billion story quickly starts to look fragile. And let's talk pressure, of course, because Google's Gemini 3 launched last month with super strong reviews, especially on reasoning and image generation. And Google says Gemini's monthly active users have jumped from 450 million in July to 650 million in October, which is still below ChatGPT's 800 million, by the way. But the growth curve is quite steep. And the Financial Times chart that we showed a few minutes ago says that Gemini users now spend more minutes per visit than ChatGPT users. Folks, that's a trust and an engagement problem, not a benchmark scores problem. Because remember, 3 years ago, it was Google that declared a code red when ChatGPT threatened search. Now the roles are quite reversed because China's DeepSeek, on the research side, especially the DeepSeek V3.2 Speciale, has just matched Gemini 3 Pro on several reasoning tasks. And another model achieved gold medal performance on the International Mathematical Olympiad benchmark, something only internal OpenAI and Google DeepMind models had done before. And it's also being discussed all over NeurIP's event and conference this week as the open source friendly challenger. So look, in one corner you have Google closing the product and the UX gap. In the other, you have DeepSeek proving that you don't need US level compute to hit frontier reasoning. And OpenAI cannot coast on the we launch ChatGPT first story anymore. By the way, congrats on completing 3 years ChatGPT. So what is OpenAI actually going to ship next week? Look, we don't have a name yet. Reddit is joking it's going to be called GPT 5.103 Minimax Thinking Light. But we know a few things already. Altman says that it scores ahead of Gemini 3 in OpenAI's internal evaluations. And it's a reasoning model like the O3 and the International Math Olympiad internal models, meaning it may come with longer chain of thought, better at math, logic, code, and tool use. It's going to be slower but more deliberate. Think deep research and thinking mode inside of ChatGPT. And it's expected to power an upgraded thinking mode for all of your complex questions and a more powerful deep research experience, possibly better agentic behavior where the model plans, tool calls, and iterates. But there's a big question that people are asking. Is this a true new generation or just heavier fine tuning on the same old backbone? Because semi analysis claims that OpenAI has not completed a full new pre training run since GPT 4.0, and that was over a year ago. And in their view, GPT 5 is mostly post training and routing tricks on the same underlying base model. And if that is true, the new reasoner might be a super specialized compute heavy head on top of an older backbone. And it's going to be optimized first to win benchmarks and LM Arena leaderboards, of course, and only secondarily tuned for real world UX. And that's exactly why some power users in the community are quite skeptical because you see comments like, great, it'll think 30 seconds longer before gaslighting you, or they nerf 5.1 thinking, they're going to nerf this too, or please don't hype another model unless you're actually going to keep it stable. But on the other hand, Mark Chen from OpenAI is out there saying that scaling is not dead, contrary to former OpenAI boss Ilya Sutskever. Again, we have covered this extensively here on front page, so make sure to check it out if you haven't already, of course. But moving on, he said OpenAI has algorithmic breakthroughs in pre-training and data efficiency. Within 1 year, they want AI interns doing implementation and debugging, and within 2.5 years, they want AI doing end-to-end research. Look, if you connect all those dots, this new model could be like the first visible step in that roadmap. A reasoner tuned not for your homework answers, but for running experiments, writing code, and iterating on ideas. So next week's release is more than just beating Gemini on a single chart. It's OpenAI testing whether it can start turning ChatGPT into the default AI researcher and an analyst for millions of people. And of course, let's talk about business and trust because code red is not happening in a vacuum. So, the past few months, users have been angry about four things. One is routing and censorship because sensitive conversations are getting silently routed to safer models and sometimes number ones. Users feel manipulated and say OpenAI is offloading legal risk onto them. Number two is model quality drift. So has GPT 5.1 or 4.5 been nerfed? Why do they feel weaker than the week they were launched? And the semi-analysis thesis that OpenAI has hit a pre-training wall after GPT 4.0 gives those complaints a technical explanation. And three is ads inside ChatGPT. Now, people have started seeing test ads like a Peloton banner popping up mid conversation. And for many pro subscribers, that's an instant deal breaker. They're literally posting on X at Sam Altman, do not do it. And lastly, it's the feature sprawl. Sora video, Atlas browser, shopping tools, teacher mode. But the core chat sometimes feels slower, dumber, and less reliable. And the harsh take from semi-analysis is that real innovation has stopped. OpenAI is now a commercial harvesting machine living off previous user growth. So, Code Red is in a way the response to that narrative by publicly delaying ads and agents and doubling down on core chat. It's OpenAI saying that, look, we hear the trust issues. We know Gemini and DeepSeek are catching up, and if we don't fix the base chat GPT, no amount of Pulse, Atlas, or Sora models will save us. Look, whether users believe that depends on whether this new reasoning model feels like in their hands and how OpenAI avoids quietly nerfing it 2 months later. At the same time, folks, don't be fooled. This is not OpenAI suddenly becoming anti commercial because this week, two big moves quietly tell you where the money engine is shifting. Because the Thrive Holdings deal, in which OpenAI is taking an ownership, in Thrive Holdings, which is one of Thrive Capital's holdings division that acquires IT and accounting firms, and also Thrive Capital is one of OpenAI's biggest investors. So OpenAI didn't put cash in, but in exchange for the stake, it will provide models, engineering support, and get access to data from Thrive Holdings portfolio companies in IT services and accounting. But what does OpenAI get? It's going to get a rich stream of structured enterprise data to train on, a guaranteed pipeline of corporate deployments where ChatGPT style agents become embedded in core workflows. Again, this is a circular deal. Investor funds OpenAI, OpenAI boosts investor portfolio, and everyone shares the upside. The Accenture partnership is another one because Accenture is putting tens and thousands of its consultants and operators on ChatGPT Enterprise, which is the largest certification and upskilling push that OpenAI has ever had. So, together, they're launching a flagship AI client program to build agentic workflows across customer service, finance, supply chain, and HR. Use the Agent Kit framework to design custom agents for large enterprises and hardwire OpenAI into big ticket transformation projects. So look, even as ads get inside ChatGPT and they get delayed, enterprise monetization is accelerating because OpenAI's internal projections reportedly aim for revenue to climb from $10 billion to $20 billion to around $35 billion by 2027. And while the company also looks to raise around $100 billion more for compute and data center build out. Again, Code Red is basically signaling that this, at the moment, is protect the consumer brand while we lock in enterprise and private equity deals. So what does all of this mean if you're watching from India or anywhere from the world building with AI? Number one, if you're a normal ChatGPT user, expect random, fewer refusals, better long form answers, even when you enable thinking or deep research, and hopefully, no permanent ads yet. But also expect more personalization because ChatGPT remembers your style, your projects, your company, which raises fresh questions about privacy and data control, which is always going to be there. And if you're a developer, you may soon get API access to a stronger and a slower reasoning model that competes directly with Gemini 3 DeepThink and DeepSeek v3.2 specially. So you have good news, better agents, better tools, better evals. Bad news is that pricing and rate limits might be steep, and history tells us that behavior can change post launch. But if you're a large enterprise or a global capability center, the Accenture partnership is a preview of what's coming because you have packaged agentic workflows for finance, HR, and supply chain, and you get certified ChatGPT enterprise rollouts at scale. And via deals like Thrive Holdings, OpenAI is trying to act as a research arm of a private equity and IT services companies. So, look, the real race now is who can turn reasoning models into reliable, auditable systems that CFOs will sign off on. So, is this the new reasoning model going to be OpenAI's big comeback, or just another entry in what people are now calling the any day now economy? On one side, you have author Pedro Domingos joking, I thought OpenAI already had AGI. I want my $1 trillion back. And power users are saying, don't get our hopes up again, please, if you do not keep it stable. Semi-analysis is accusing the company of hitting a pre-training wall and hiding behind routing, ads, and PR. And on the other side, you have OpenAI's Mark Chen promising algorithmic breakthroughs, AI interns in 1 year, and full AI researchers in 2.5 years. And Sam Altman calling code red, putting ads, agents, and pulse on ice to fix the base chat GPT, and a brand new reasoning model that he's going to unveil. If it really beats Google Gemini 3 in the wild, it could reset this entire conversation overnight. But here's the real question I want to leave you with. Will this next model finally feel like a thinking partner that gets better every day you use it? Or will it be another benchmark trophy that slowly gets nerfed in the name of efficiency and risk management? Well, we'll know soon enough. Next week, of course, when this model drops, we'll benchmark it live, side by side against Gemini 3 and DeepSeek and see if the code red panic was worth it after all. Until then, please watch the charts, user time per visit, and will ChatGPT's curve bend back up against Gemini? Or investor flows into AI and leveraged ETFs? Are we in a rational build out or pure thrill chasing? And please tell us in the comments which model are you betting big on for serious work in 2026? Is it ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepSeek, or any other open source model? Folks, this is Front Page by AIM Network. Live, share, and subscribe. And always remember to think AI, think AIM. Up next, we have big news from Apple because Apple just made one of the most important AI hires possibly in its history. And it comes from a Bengaluru University graduate, Amar Subramanya, who is now in charge of Apple's global AI strategy. He's ex Google, he's ex Microsoft, he ran engineering for Google's Gemini Assistant, he helped build foundational models for Copilot at Microsoft, and now he's walking into Cupertino at the exact moment that Apple is being accused of falling behind in AI. Before we proceed, remember there's a huge demand for Bengaluru based tech bros, with Anthropic also appointing Rahul Patil, the PESET graduate, as the CTO. But back to Apple. John Giannandrea, the man who led Apple's AI push since 2018, is retiring next year in spring 2026. And Siri's Apple Intelligence reboot has already been delayed to next year after a very public stumble. And rivals like OpenAI, Google, and DeepSeek are racing ahead with frontier models and dedicated AI hardware. So here's the question. Is Bengaluru boy Amar Subramanya the person who finally makes Apple an AI first company? Or is his appointment too late in a race already dominated by OpenAI and Google? So let's break down who he is, what changes inside Apple from tonight, and what this means for India and the global AI war. This is Front Page by AM Network. Welcome back. Like, share, subscribe. You do not want to miss this one. So while you're at it, here's what Apple announced. John Giannandrea, the senior VP of machine learning and AI strategy at the company, is stepping down and will only serve as an advisor until spring 2026, and then he retires. So up next, Amar Subramanya becomes the vice president of AI, reports directly to Craig Federighi, who's the Apple's senior software engineering VP, and will lead Apple's foundational models, ML research, AI safety, and evaluation. And the rest of Giannandrea's empire is being split. AI infrastructure and search and knowledge move to Chief Operating Officer Saib Khan and Services Chief Eddie Q. Apple calls this the start of a new chapter for Apple Intelligence, and it's promising intelligent, trusted, and profoundly personal experiences. What does this mean in English? This is Apple's biggest AI leadership reshuffle since Apple Intelligence was announced in 2024, and the center of gravity has shifted to a Bengaluru educated engineer. So let's talk about the man now sitting on top of Apple's AI stack. Because Amar Subramanya did his Bachelor's of Engineering in Electronics and Communication at Bangalore University, then went on to the University of Washington for a PhD in Computer Science, focusing on ML, large scale systems, and natural language technologies. So, the person who will decide how Siri thinks and how Apple's foundation models behave started that journey in Nama Bengaluru's engineering classrooms. And of course, 16 years at Google. Joined Google early and stayed nearly for 16 years. Rose to become the head of engineering for the Gemini assistant. Worked closely with Google DeepMind, giving him hands on experience with, say, cutting edge research teams, large multimodal models, and a global scale infrastructure. So, in simple terms, he's one of the few people who has seen Google's AI stack from the inside. A brief but an important stop at Microsoft, and just 6 months ago, he became the corporate vice president of AI at Microsoft. He worked on the foundation models that power Microsoft's Copilot across enterprise and consumer users. He's publicly praised the culture as low ego, high ambition, and called conversations with Mustafa Suleiman and Satya Nadella nothing short of inspiring. And yet, he left that job in months to join Apple. Now, that tells you two things. One, Apple is probably offering a bigger, more central mandate than he had at Microsoft because Apple is admitting that it wants to win the next decade. And for that, it needs someone who has lived inside intimately both Gemini and Copilot. So Amar is not walking into a calm and a polished Cupertino. Remember that because he's walking into a firefighting AI moment. Because Apple Intelligence has underdelivered, which was launched with a huge hype in 2024 and hasn't yet become the must-have AI experience. And one of its biggest promises, a dramatically upgraded Siri, was pushed further to 2026. And iOS 18 marketing talked about a smarter Siri, but Apple later admitted that it couldn't ship the full version on time because internally that delay also triggered an exodus of AI talent, emergency rewrites of Siri's personal context, on screen awareness, and app integration. And of course, now you have a complete leadership reset. And while rivals are moving faster, Apple was still wrestling with Siri. Microsoft and OpenAI rolled out Copilot and agentic workflows across Windows, Microsoft Office, and GitHub. Then, on the other hand, you have Google, who unified DeepMind and Google Brain, launched Gemini 3, and put it into Android, Google Search, and its workspace. Of course, not to forget, DeepSeek in China matched Gemini class reasoning with far fewer chips and GPUs. An ex Apple design chief, Johnny Ive, sold his startup to OpenAI with prototypes for an AI native design that is already in the works. And that's expected to launch in the next 2 years. So for Apple, a company that once defined consumer tech, it suddenly looks like a fast follower in AI because investors are, of course, getting restless. Apple stock is, of course, up this year, but it underperformed other AI heavy tech giants. And of course, big investors, including some we talked about in our earlier episode on Tim Cook's possible exit and the iPhone 20 era, have quietly questioned Apple's AI narrative. So Amar's appointment is not just a hiring story, it's Apple telling Wall Street that look, you know what, we're serious. We're putting a Gemini and a Copilot experienced engineer in charge of fixing Apple Intelligence. But what exactly will Amar control? Because let's map the power structure as this is where the real story lies. So Amar Subramanya, as we said, he's going to be the VP of AI. He's going to own Apple's foundational models, the big models that will power Siri, on-device assistants, generative features in messages, photos, Xcode, and beyond. He's also going to lead ML research. That's the brain that trusts and decides the architectures, training recipes, how far Apple pushes on-device versus cloud models. The brain that also owns the AI safety and evaluation that is crucial for content moderation, bias and toxicity controls, and of course, regulatory compliance in US, Europe, and India. So it's going to report directly to Craig Federighi, which means Apple's AI is now logically going to be attached to software and operating system, not treated as a detached research lab. Meanwhile, Savik Khan, the COO, now oversees AI infrastructure, the fleets of servers, chips, data centers, and contracts needed to train and run these foundational models. Eddie Q, the service boss, gets search and knowledge, aligning AI with Apple Music, TV Plus, iCloud, and App Store, and potentially all of Apple's new AI services. So this split tells us Apple is doing three things: making AI research and safety a first-class citizen under Amar Subramanya, embedding AI infra into core operations under Khan, crucial as Apple signs chip and data center deals. 3. Ensuring services monetization is tightly tied into AI through Q. So it's a triangular command structure. You got Amar with the brains, Sabi with the muscle, Q with the money, all under Federighi's software umbrella. Now layer this with the other Apple moves that we've been tracking on front page, because we have hardware and CEO succession, and that is what we spoke about in our earlier episode where we tracked Tim Cook's exit as the Apple CEO, and then of course, as we've been mentioning, Amar Subramania's entry, I mean, as the new VP of AI. And once again, let me tell you how this fits into Apple's bigger playbook. So again, let me relay this to you because I'm sure there's a lot of information. So Tim Cook, we all discussed that he's going to have a potential exit. John Ternus, the quiet force behind Apple Silicon and modern iPhones, is the leading candidate. Apple is preparing an iPhone 20 supercycle with foldables, new curved glass designs, and a staggered year-round release schedule. And in that world, Apple needs Ternus driving hardware and silicon, Federica and Amar driving software plus AI, Q monetizing services on top, and Amar Subramanya is essentially being hired as the AI co-pilot for the post-Cook and John Ternus era. Of course, you have Silicon and Intel building on the new AI hardware base, because let me tell you, we're going to add one more puzzle piece because Apple is going back to Intel. Yes, you heard that right. From 2027, Intel is expected to manufacture Apple's entry-level M series chips on its 18A or the 18AP process nodes, while TSMC handles the higher-end parts. So what does this happen? This lets Apple diversify beyond Taiwan, signal support for made in USA industrial policy, and secure more capacity for AI-heavy Macs and iPads. And for Intel, it's a chance to prove that its foundry comeback and attract other big AI customers. So for Amar, who has seen Google's and Microsoft infra's demands up close, this is quite powerful. He now gets to influence which models Apple builds, which chips they need, and in a world where AI performance, power efficiency, and on-device privacy are the main differentiators, and the Johnny Ive plus OpenAI threat also exists at the same time, because Johnny Ive has sold his startup to OpenAI. Like we mentioned before, he and Sam Altman are working on an AI native hardware that could show up within 2 years. If OpenAI ships a beloved, beautifully designed AI device, Apple faces something it hasn't seen since the early Android days. It's a rival hardware ecosystem with world-class design and world-class frontier models. Amar's job is to make sure Apple Intelligence feels so native, so private and polished on the iPhone, Mac and Vision Pro that users don't feel the need to defect. Let's zoom in on the India angle, because this is not just feel-good nostalgia. A Bangalore University engineer now is going to direct Apple's foundation models and AI research, while Apple is simultaneously expanding manufacturing in India, deepening its supplier footprint, and hiring more local engineering talent. So symbolically, this appointment tells young Indian engineers that you don't just work for Silicon Valley anymore, you can literally end up steering where the AI strategy of the world's most valuable company lies. And practically, you should expect more India-aware models over time, better understanding and hopefully of Indian languages, accents, and cultural context. And of course, closer collaboration between Bengaluru's AI talent pool and Cupertino's ML teams as Apple hunts for specialized researchers and infrastructure engineers. So, what does success or failure look for Amar's Apple AI division? Best case scenario, by 2026, Siri's delayed reboot finally lands. It's going to be context aware, reliably private, and deeply integrated into apps across iPhone, Mac, Watch, and CarPlay. And of course, Apple Intelligence hopefully evolves from a buzzword into a real daily assistant, which is going to summarize your life, automate all of your workflows, all while running a lot of the intelligence on device locally. And Apple uses the Intel plus TSMC combination to ship AI optimized M series chips, hopefully giving it a significant edge in battery life and latency. So, in that world, Amar is remembered as the person who turned Apple from an AI laggard into the champion of private on device AI. Middle of the road scenario is that Apple improves Siri and Apple Intelligence, but remains a fast follower because Gemini, Copilot, and OpenAI agents continue to stay a step ahead in raw capability, while Apple competes on design ecosystem and privacy, but not leading edge models. Worst case scenario, of course, we hope not, internal politics between AI, hardware services, and infrastructure teams, which leads to slow decision making. The Siri reboot stumbles again. Johnny Ive plus OpenAI launch a beloved AI device, and Apple's AI narrative once again becomes great hardware, okay AI, locked in ecosystem. And in that world, this hire would be seen as a smart move, but one that came too late. Here's the question that we're asking tonight. Is Amar Subramania's Apple a Satya style inflection point for Apple's AI, or just a high profile hire that's going to paper over deeper structural problems? Because on one side, Apple has missed the first wave of the Gen AI hype cycle, and Apple Intelligence is yet to produce a wow moment just like ChatGPT's launch, and the company is juggling potential CEO succession, AI catch up, and once in a generation iPhone reboot all at the same time. On the other side, it now has a Bengaluru trained researcher who has built with Google, shipped with Microsoft, and now has the mandate to redesign Apple's entire AI stack, from foundational models to safety. So, folks, tell us in the comments below, are you bullish on Apple's AI comeback under Amar Subramanya? This is Front Page by AIM Network. Like, share, and subscribe. But always remember to think AI, think AIM. Tonight on Front Page, our third news for the evening, Zoho just did something that most SaaS founders only rant about in private. Because Sridhar Vembu went directly at Y Combinator's Gary Tan and at the entire vibe coding will kill SaaS narrative. So the question we are asking you tonight is simple. Is vibe coding the future of software or just the fast lane to tech debt hell? Let's get into it. This is Front Page by AIM Network. Like, share, subscribe. You really don't want to miss this one. So here's the latest beef in one line. Gary Tan, YC chief, says that why pay $30 per seat per month for overbundled SaaS when non-tech operations people can wipe code custom apps in a weekend? And Zoho Sridhar Vembu basically replies, if that were true, why is Zoho still growing customers at 50% plus? And where are your wipe coded email, spreadsheet, accounting, and messaging apps? But let's quickly decode the jargon. Vibe coding was coined by Andre Karpathy. Also, the word of the year as per Collins Dictionary. It means that describe the app in its natural language, let AI plus tools write the code, glue it together, and ship. Here are the tools in the world that let you do that. You have Cursor, Replit, and Bolt. Newer players like Rocket.ai, Emergent Labs, Composio, and Tablesprint. AI agents that can read, edit, and run your code and shell commands. Because this is Gary Tan's thesis, which is brutal for SaaS. In the next few years, even non-technical operations teams will spin up their own CRM, ticketing, and internal tools over just the weekend. So why keep paying $30 per seat for over-bundled SaaS tools like Zoho? Look, in his view, the stack shifts from SaaS subscription to internally wipe-coded tools on Replit-style platforms. And here's what Vembu fired back on the social media platform X. If vibe coding was already winning, Zoho would be dead or shrinking. Instead, he says customer growth is exceeding 50%. Where are the serious vibe coded products? He calls out four categories: emails, spreadsheets, accounting, and messaging. His point, if weekend apps could outcompete hard earned SaaS, we'd already see credible alternatives in these mission critical areas. But guess what? We don't. The core argument is that vibe coding basically is just an runaway tech debt. His words in plain English means that no strong guarantees on security, privacy, and compliance uptime are brought about by vibe coding apps. There's also going to be no clarity on who will maintain the thing that 3 years later. And of course, every vibe coding shortcut that you take becomes invisible tech debt. And then the killer line. Without those guarantees, vibe coding just piles up tech debt faster and faster until the whole thing collapses. His alternative vision is that Vembu says his own R&D is about combining compiler tech and AI to make programmers radically more productive while still guaranteeing your security, privacy, compliance. In other words, he means that AI is a power tool for engineers, but not as a replacement for engineering. And then he throws shade straight at Gary Tan. People like Gary Tan, tech is too pawned off on unsuspecting acquirers. Because let me make a bet with Gary Tan, we will outshine and outlast his vibe coding companies. This is not just Zoho versus Y Combinator, it's kind of a proxy war for three different futures of software. The first one is the Vibe future, Gary Tan's beautiful world, where AI builds 80 to 90% of the apps, non engineers just orchestrate tools, SaaS becomes too slow, too expensive, and platforms like Replit, Cursor, or Google's anti gravity become the new Salesforce. Number two is the disciplined AI future like Vembu's SaaS world, where AI helps developers 10x their productivity, but systems are still designed and governed by engineers. And of course, compliance, audits, uptime, data guarantees matter more than your weekend wipe coding hacks. And in this world, SaaS doesn't die, it evolves with much more powerful AI under the hood. So here's the chaotic future that we're going to talk about because companies wipe code half of their stack, nobody documents anything. AI agents do get terminal access and they end up running wild, and then one day, that one final day, something catastrophic happens, which takes us to one of the wildest agent stories we've seen this year. Now let's bring this home to India. At the Bengaluru Tech Summit, Abhishek Singh, who is the additional secretary at the Ministry of Information Technology and Electronics and the CEO of India AI Mission, gave quite a blunt warning. India became the world's tech because of its engineering talent, but AI coding tools from OpenAI, Anthropic, Google are now directly challenging that advantage. If we don't turbocharge our engineer with those AI skills, we run a huge risk and we'll have a lot to lose. Here are the key points. The old model, which is body shopping plus manual coding at scale, is going to outpace the new model, which is AI augmented engineering, higher order skills in AI, data, infrastructure, and safety, because the India AI mission is already funding fellowships across engineering, medicine, law, and liberal arts. And of course, it's also building data labs for annotators and analysts in tier 2 cities. And of course, launching the Yuva AI for All to make AI literacy at mass scale, supporting India's foundation models like servums with government backed compute. So now let's connect all the dots because Gary's world says that non tech folks plus vibe coding plus AI agents can replace a lot of structured engineering. And Vembu's world says that serious software still needs deep engineering and AI should not amplify those skills and not pretend that they don't matter. The Ministry of Information Technology and Electronics is effectively sliding with upgrade the engineer and don't eliminate the engineer. For India, that's a big strategic choice, and we covered extensively on Debunk. So please make sure to check it out if you haven't already. So now, let's be fair and steelman both of their sides. Gary Tan is look not entirely wrong because internal tools are often clunky, underloved, and expensive. AI assisted developers are already transforming how fast you can build apps, dashboards, and workflows. And for some use cases, which involve small teams, highly specific workflows, short-lived experiments, and all of those, wipe-coded tools can absolutely beat generic SaaS on speed and fit. But Sridhar Vembu's criticism lands hard on where it matters. When you're dealing with payroll, accounting, regulated industries, multi-year audits, sensitive customer data, you of course need a clear ownership. You need the versioning and change control. Of course, security, privacy, and compliance guarantees, long term maintenance, and SLAs. Look, if your platform is basically some LLM plus a browser based IDE, weekend scripts that nobody fully understands anymore, you might save that $30 per seat per month today, only to pay 10 times in outage fines and rewrite costs much, much later. And that's the tech debt bomb that Vembu is talking about. So did Zoho Sridhar Vembu just kill Gary Tan's vibe? Look, not quite, but he did do something important. He forced the industry to admit that AI shortcuts don't exempt you from software engineering reality. Because here's how we see it: wipe coding is amazing for prototypes, internal site tools, and learning, but it is dangerous when you pretend it replaces decades of engineering discipline overnight. Founders and CIOs who treat AI as magic will end up with invisible tech debt until something snaps and collapses. And those who treat AI as a power tool inside a well governed stack will outlast the hype. So, on one side, you have Gary Tan betting on a world where non tech operations wipe code away entire SaaS categories. And on the other, you have Sridhar Vembu betting that deep, boring, reliable engineering plus AI assisted productivity will beat shortcut culture over a 10 to 20-year horizon. Somewhere in the middle is you, whether you're the builder, founder, CTO, or a GCC leader asking, do I want my core business running on weekend code and auto approve agents, or on systems that I understand, that I can audit, and can stand behind when things go wrong? So, of course, tell us in the comments below, whose bet are you backing? Gary Tan's wipe coded future or Sridhar Vembu's compiler plus AI discipline? And have you personally had a wipe coding moment go horribly wrong? This debate isn't ending anytime soon. Of course, we're going to wait for a Gary Tan response, and he's very good at it historically, as we've seen, and we'll keep you updated as it evolves. Folks, that's it for tonight's front page live stream by AIM Network. Like, share, and subscribe. And always remember, think AI, think AIM.